It's Andra Zaharia here, and I'm delighted to bring you the Cyber Empathy podcast, where I share stories of kindness, curiosity, and connection that show you how humans shape online security and privacy. I've been in the cybersecurity industry since 2015, and the one thing that I appreciate most about it are the incredibly diverse, curious, empathetic, and crazy smart people in it. They have taught me a lot about myself, about technology, and about all the ways that we can make a meaningful contribution to the world that we live in. I am beyond thrilled to share with you their stories, their passions, their values, and their principles, and most of all, how they lead through example and how they make their work and their passion projects count every single day. I'm super excited to share them with you, and I hope you'll join me and become my partner in cyber empathy. So see you soon. The people I've seen make one of the most meaningful contributions to the cybersecurity space is those who have found a match between their personal values and the values of the, hacking community. Ethical hacking, that is, of course. So today, I'm happy to share this conversation with you with John Opdenakker. He is one of my former guests in the decision-making podcast I used to do, actually, called How Do You Know? I last talked to him about 2 years ago for the podcast, and I've seen his positive impact in the community grow over the last few years and expand through everything he tries to do to help educate others around why cybersecurity is important and how they can actually, build it into their lives. And we're talking not just about technical people or people who work in the industry. We're talking about regular people like you and me who don't have a technical background, but who still care about these things because, as I mentioned, their personal values guide them towards these topics. So it was interesting to see how John moved from application security, which is basically making sure that developers ship secure code. So you have, safe to use software that has as few vulnerabilities as possible because, having like a completely vulnerability free application is almost impossible. So he moved from application security to managing security programs. And he has some really, exciting examples that show how you can get people to join you on this journey of using cybersecurity as a lens and understanding how you can build skills, valuable skills for yourself through training in all things digital security. So you'll find that John speaks with a lot of passion and excitement and energy about this topic because he cares so much about it. And he practices empathy and kindness and generosity in his contribution to the InfoSec community. So I hope you'll join me for this episode, and I hope you take as many useful ideas and inspiration from this episode as possible. Talk to you soon. John, I'm so thrilled to have you on the Cyber Empathy podcast. This is our second time actually talking in the form of a podcast. We did this 2 years ago for my previous podcast, How Do You Know? I will link to that episode because it was really good as well, everything that you had to say. And now we're tackling a new topic like 2 years later, which feels like 10 years later, in both good ways and not great ways too. But I'm excited to have you here since you're one of the most kind, empathetic, generous, and very patient people that I know in cybersecurity in general.
Whoa, thanks. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the very, very nice words. And indeed, it has been, I guess, 2 or 3 years that we recorded the previous podcast. But it seems like you said that 10 years, and yeah, that's correct.
In emotional years,
yeah, emotionally,
it feels like a decade.
Each year was like 5, I think.
Yes, but still worth it. I think that we try to do our best during this time and kind of take all the good and the bad and just, draw out the more life lessons that we could from them. So that's why I think that, having been through all of these challenges, all of us, I think that it helps so much to reconnect on these more human, more kind, more soothing place, I guess, and more and kinder conversation, warmer conversations that can replenish us a little bit and give us a little bit of energy. So, given your specialization and your background, I'm very curious to find out and to show listeners how you practice empathy in your work and in your contribution to the community, because you're an active contributor in many, many ways.
Well, yes, active as in I'm on Twitter and sharing some blogs and some bad jokes as well. But what you said, if I may come back to that for a bit, what you said is so true. We need some positivity, and that's why I'm trying to make a positive contribution. I'm not always succeeding, let's say, but at least I try. And in my job, it means, for instance, we last year and this year as well, we're trying to make the next step from security awareness towards really a security culture. Because what I mean with that is that awareness is like the usual sessions. You have the lunch session where someone's going to tell you something about the latest risks or why data breaches happen, why you need strong passwords. And that's very, very general, and that's good. As such, that's a good thing. But it's not because people are aware that they necessarily will change their behavior. And that's what really struck me, that's we and I think a lot of people are doing the same over and over again and expect to really make a difference. How that relates to empathy is quite simple. And every conversation I have with a colleague, with a coworker, or if it's a team meeting, it's just try to understand how they do their job, talk with different departments, feel what they do, get a sense of what they do, and make the reflection about what we ask from them. It's a change process for them. So if we're really going to stand a bit in their shoes, we will understand which problems they have. If we ask, literally ask, okay, we need to do this, also explain why. For instance, we need to use strong passwords. We're going to do this with a password manager. But if we don't know how they do it now, what's the perceived barrier for them to use the password manager? How will we get them to use the password? It's one of the examples. There are so many others. And with each conversation is actually an opportunity to, if it's an individual conversation or with a team, just get that sense, talk with the people. And after all, being nice and being kind to people, it just pays off. Because what I notice in having more communication, it's really about having more communication. You can do an email to a team, but it's also about reaching out to individual peoples. What is more and more difficult because there's no coffee corners anymore, or in your own house, of course. But that really pays off, and it also makes the job a lot more worthwhile, because it's really, sometimes it's not always fun being a security professional. And if you then approach people like in the wrong way, or just doing another session with no results, it's just frustrating. And what we just see is that it gets better and better, and people reach out to me, not only to me. We have a team of security champions reach out to us. It's both ways. It's not one way from us, and then you feel that relationships are built. And this is where empathy matters so much, because if you just say, here's a policy, execute it, good luck with that, but it won't work.
That's not going to work.
The policies are important for other reasons, but you're really the translation between the policies you need for security, compliance, or whatever reasons you want or need them. But you as security team, you must facilitate that the people can reach that. I see ourselves as a service department. A lot of people don't like to hear that in the security profession, but we're really there to help the people. And sometimes we have to say no, because things are really, really bad. But those should be exceptions. I mean, if the house is burning, you have to take action. Then empathy is maybe not on the first place, but you know what I mean.
I think that you did a great job at painting a very vivid picture of what it looks like, when things work, when you're actually interested in people, when you take their context into consideration and you try to actively explore it and actively connect to that context and get people enrolled and get people to have skin in the game so they can feel like this is something they can do and something that matters to them and something that helps them on an individual level, not just as an employee, part of a company, that they just have to do this.
I think there's too much focused. We're in work context, professional context. It has to be about work. No, in each conversation, get to know the person. And it's not only about security; it's about making connections in life. It's really worth it. And also, if you security content, if you target the more we have, for instance, we have communication channels, and there we focus more on personal security. And you see that pays off, because if you're interested in the person and tell them, give them advice, give them if there's happening something like the Facebook hack was beginning of the year, if I'm correct, those are events they can relate to. We can debate if Facebook is if it's still cool or good to have a Facebook account, but a lot of people still have that, and just you can relate to that and make a story and tell them, look, if your phone number wasn't a part of the breach, yeah, okay, it's a pity you can't do anything about not much about your phone number. Maybe you can put another form of two-factor authentication and you can remove your phone number, but also you have this awareness learning moment, and it's in their personal context. And all these aspects combined, it adds up, and then after a while people get more confident, and that's important. They like you said, they feel I can really change it. And after all this, I'm going back again to the example of password manager. This password manager is even a productivity tool. I know you tweeted.
Exactly.
I know you
I keep
tweeted
telling
about that,
people
Andra, but
yes.
it's perceived as a security tool, which it obviously is. But I'm not losing the time anymore to look up on a paper and type my password, or even worse, type my reused password everywhere. So it's
Yep.
an enhancement, and it's also should be part of your story. We professionals are often too narrow-minded and security, and it's not good. It's not good. There's more. Security is only one aspect. There are a lot of important aspects for software or applications or processes. But after all, if your product doesn't work or isn't sold, good luck with your security. The other way around, of course, as well. But
Exactly. It all works together. And I think that this is actually one of the things that I love about cybersecurity, and that probably people outside the industry don't see as much, is that when you work in this field, there are so many concepts and there's so much knowledge around the fact that it cultivates systems thinking. So it gets you, it really enhances your critical thinking, and it helps you see how systems interact with one another and what happens, what the effects and the consequences of that are for your life. It helps you see like 5 steps ahead. Whereas, without this knowledge and without this having security anywhere in your kind of mental universe, without it, you wouldn't be able to make those connections. And that kind of thinking and those skills, you can actually, apply them in other areas of your life. That's why I advocate so much for, just having the very basic knowledge of how security works, simply because it actually helps you think better and more clearly and hopefully make better decisions, just like you mentioned in your example, which I thought was extremely well placed in this context. So when you work, obviously you're a security champion. You advocate, for cultivating empathy. Even if you don't use these exact words, you lead with empathy in your work inside a company. How do you get, fellow developers or fellow security specialists to kind of cultivate the same approach? Because for some it comes naturally, for some it doesn't, which is absolutely fine.
Several aspects to that one. First of all, we also worked on onboarding. So everyone who joins the company will get security onboarding. What does that mean? They will have a welcome conversation with myself or another security champion. They will get info about, hey, we use these and these tools. Why do we use them? Always the why, not only what we use, because obviously that's just if I look at a lot of things professionally and then even broader than that, often the why is left out. And then just have to look at myself. If I don't know why I have to do something, I will have resistance. And I will, if they say me that I have to, I will, but
it's going to bounce right off, basically.
yeah. And so from the beginning on, that's one part. The other part is, like I mentioned, just as we have security champions. So we identified not only in our software, we identified application security champions, but we also have what I like to call awareness security champions or process security champions. They all do their part of awareness and process security, which is related to application development, of course, but just to make that little nuance. And so that we have them in each team. How is that helpful? Because they're close to the team, they're within their team, and they're with their teammates. They know each other really well. So it's a lot easier to capture feedback, honest feedback, because there's the distances, that's their coworkers. So and that's one thing. If we need to change something, we can distribute the change easily across the teams via the security champions. So it's things like that help. And then we have like mandatory security training. The word mandatory is a shame, but it is mandatory. But we are lucky that our development members are really also interested. We also hire them on not per se on knowledge, but on willingness to learn about and they need to be privacy and security minded, I'd say. So you can see that from simple things, and then when you have the first conversation with potential employee, that's with a candidate, all these pieces fit together. Of course, you can't start from zero. Let's say there's a current situation, and there is need for more awareness, and that's where the security champions play their role, and other initiatives. And what we also do is general information, like I mentioned, but also targeted sessions with specific content for the teams. So
that's a lot.
It's a kind of an entire program with its own little or bigger projects we realize within it.
It sounds really good. And from every detail that you shared with us, it is so clear that this is so focused on the human aspect of doing our jobs. I feel like, why did it take us a pandemic to realize that this artificial kind of barrier between our professional selves and our personal selves is, well, artificial? Anyway, it took us a pandemic to realize that. It took us, this sudden physical disconnection from one another to realize how much we need one another. And I guess that, this is more visible in cybersecurity than in other fields. It is so visible how much we need each other to make things happen. Just like you mentioned, you need someone on the team who you feel comfortable and familiar with, so you're more receptive to what they have to teach you. So it doesn't feel something that's foreign and imposed and artificial and abstract. So it feels something that you can actually relate to on a personal level, on an emotional level, because we're all emotional creatures. And I love how you highlighted this kind of the fact that you also hire people based on the match between their personal values and the values that you cultivate, not only as a company, but these are values that the cybersecurity community cultivates in general. I'm not talking about the commercial part, because that's another aspect to it. Sometimes the community and the commercial aspect overlap, but sometimes they don't, which we see every day. And I'm really glad that you mentioned this. And I just wanted to bring up Wolf's tweet that we were talking about earlier around the fact that good security reflects your values. I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it, and a very kind of clarifying thought. And that is so true. I mean, I'm in this industry because I resonate with its values and its principles. And I bet that this is something that you feel as well, just like many of us do.
Yeah, maybe some companies should be more like that, but that's an all different story.
Leading by example is the best we can do.
Do we take your security seriously? Is often way too little, way too late?
So I was wondering, because you see so much through your work and the fact that you're very immersed into this field. Sometimes try to not call it an industry, because that part, it feels like it's a bit farther from our values that we would like it to be. So you probably see, a lot of moments where empathy is missing. And I think that one of the things that you're also very familiar with and you follow is when a company has a data breach, which happens very often nowadays, and how customers find out about that breach and how their expectations are set. So, where do you feel empathy is lacking the most in this process that is very critical and sensitive for so many people?
For me, it starts already with one step earlier, before the data breach happened. There are companies that's just gather a lot of data they don't need. You could see that as a data privacy issue, which it obviously is, but that's also security-wise an issue for people who reuse passwords, put all their data there, gets hacked out of company A, database of company A, and they go to another site and they just assemble a mass amount of data of everyone. And what has that to do with empathy? If a customer entrusts you with data, it's your moral duty, I'd say, to protect them at best. I mean, I'm naive because a lot of companies just don't do that, but you would hope that this was the case. And then there's this correlation between companies that are not good at not per se, not the Facebooks of this world, but the smaller companies which are not good at privacy and ask all kind of data are obviously often also not good at security. That's just a little nuance I wanted to make. Facebook is obviously quite good at security, but yeah, the rest you can
Yeah, but
complete.
it happens too. Yeah. It's actually, I think that most people assume that by default that companies do a very good job at this. Most people just
I
assume.
actually don't know. That's a good point. And security branch, I think most don't assume that. But also, we must be fair. It's not that smaller companies are just running behind, but they don't have the budget either. But even then, there would be with some small adoptions and okay, breaches happen. But then, what for me is important, what do you do afterwards? First of all, I would apologize because I had to protect the data of the company, and it doesn't matter that there was a vendor who got hacked. It doesn't matter. It's the customer has a contract with our company. We're responsible. Apologize, own up, and say sorry. This shouldn't have happened. Leave the phrases like "we take your security seriously. Privacy is at the heart of everything we do." Leave them out, please. I mean, this is just pure nonsense. Say, because there is a reason why companies can't immediately disclose, but obviously they're hiding behind it. They don't tell what a lot of them don't tell what's happening, and that's really frustrating because you got my data, you didn't protect it as good as possible, or maybe you did your best. That doesn't even matter. If you're honest and you say this and this went wrong, this was the reason why your data got stolen. Hopefully we promised to do better and just take these and these actions to. That's mostly in the disclosures nowadays. Change your password, and also for other accounts where you use the same. But just an honest, candid data breach disclosure, and we're missing that so often. In my opinion, there's too much like damage control and lawyers, and nothing against lawyers at all, but there's also the side of the humans that are impacted, and depending on the site, this can have devastating impact. And the Ashley Madison breach is well known, where people's very sensitive information was stolen or even government websites, etc., where sensitive data is, that the impact can be really big. It's again stand in the people's shoes who are affected, and if you can't do that for a little bit, and I understand all other things like damage control and reputation, etc. But I think if you're honest and candid and you say we're this and this happened, we're trying to do better, we're going to fix it, we're going to keep you up to date. I mean that's for instance the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands. It's one of the examples that pops up in my mind. They had a ransomware attack and they were really, really good at giving updates on their website, and afterwards they're saying it was not a data breach as such, but a ransomware attack. They were saying like this happened. They even gave a seminar when all their systems were up and running with lessons learned. I mean, this was like, whoa, this is really good. You went through a really shitty period because recovering from such an attack,
Exactly.
it's massive. And then they did it like this. So it can be done differently, and then it can be, we could learn from each other because no company should claim they never get breached. It's something that's bound to happen somewhere.
And collaboration is something that cyber criminals do very well. Hence, just insane amount of things that are going on in a underground economy. I think you made some excellent points there, and those were very helpful examples to know, as regular internet users, as customers of companies. So we know what something, what a human and like a candid and, like you mentioned, a very honest way of communicating these issues looks like, versus empty words that don't mean anything to anyone and they're just there to just tick a checkbox. So switching the perspective, what does it feel like? Because I think that sometimes we know what empathy is, but we forget what it feels like. So I wanted to ask you, what does it feel like to be on the receiving end of an empathetic experience? What did it look like for you in cybersecurity, whether it was at work or in the community or in general? Because I think that highlighting that and remembering what it feels like gives us so much energy to try to do the same for others.
Well, it escapes me which one it was. I'm in a few data breaches. Like I said before we started recording, not too much that I know of. Important nuance. There was one which was really good, and it was like, it's more or less coming back to the example of like University of Maastricht, which didn't impact me, of course, but it was like they were really, and they candid what happened. This is why we got hacked. This data is stolen. They updated if they knew. There are known examples from this online as well. We should do a comparison, good and just a thought, good and bad data breach disclosures.
There's the article of your next blog article.
I have been thinking about that, but it's some research, because, like I said, now I can't even remember the names. I know that most most disclosures are more of the same. So I'm really, really pleasantly surprised if I don't retweet take security seriously.
Exactly. Using non-cliche words, talking to people like we're talking in this conversation right now, and not trying to force phrases into context. Just be natural, be human.
Try to keep things simple. If you want to reach the target audience, you must try to speak their language. You can still use the words that need, the terms that you need, but at least explain it. If you think that's not clear, explain a little bit, and not sorry to say, but it's some marketing. Don't know if it's marketing purely, but it's several marketing departments are using this kind of buzzwords or FUD. Another that I wanted to add is like, what's really for me a pleasant experience is like when I'm doing my job. I already mentioned it a bit, that you feel like you're not the guy who says no. I'm not the guy who says no. There's also an empathic experience, like they're wanting to collaborate. It's not, they know he's not here to let's say make life impossible upon us. So it's more general. It's not one or two examples, but it's that feeling that it's really rewarding, and also in general in community. I hope that's sometimes I have really people reaching out publicly on Twitter or privately and saying, you inspired me to write a book last week or 2 weeks ago. I was like, what?
That is so cool to hear. That is awesome, because creativity can come from anywhere.
It was good for my ego. Not that I have a lot of ego. No, I'm just joking. But I was like, well, that's kind of cool that just by being myself and writing some blogs and hopefully being nice and without knowing, and then that I could reach that. So that's more like
exactly
the feeling I have, what matters to me, because after all the social media and stuff is just a bit of fun and sharing some blog posts and like we were chatting
but
about.
These connections, these connections, I think, are so important. We never know how things are going to play out a few years into the future. We don't know, where our inspiration comes from or who we might help. I truly believe that, there's someone who needs what we're creating, whether it's software, whether it's security programs, whether it's tweets, whether it's anything else. I think that there's always someone who needs what we're trying to put out into the world. And if we do that from a place of empathy, and if we try to bring some positivity into a field which is usually very doomy and gloomy. I think that a little bit can go a long way, and all of those kind of tiny positive things tend to add up and hopefully, move the conversation forward with a bit more lightness and a lot more empathy.
It shows a bit that I don't know who's looking at I'm only on Twitter active in the InfoSec community, if you like. If as an outsider you look at it, it must be really strange. I don't know if it's InfoSec specific, but it's like a lot of fighting, a lot of echo chambering, and that's really hard because it's difficult. But I get a lot of negativity often when I try to tell simple things or things in a simple fashion for an audience which is mainly not the ones that are following me, and that's a shame. Also, I'm glad they are following me and they enjoy what I do, don't get me wrong, but I would like to reach more people outside of the bubble, and then they're like criticizing me for yeah, but that's not elite enough, huh? and stuff like that.
Yes,
and
yes.
Not saying like this, but almost I felt ridiculized several times, like, are you so stupid that you're talking about that, or that's so trivial? And then again, there are other people and say, hey, I appreciate it, and what can I do to improve? And then it's good for me. I reached 1-2 persons. That's okay, but I think we should be more empathic and also not calling out companies all the time. I'm not saying in the beginning on Twitter it was like, yeah, company does bad at security. Yeah, let's call it out. Yes, but maybe we can.
Let's try to help them.
You can hold them accountable, but do it in a positive way, or try to help them. Or if they're not willing to help, okay.
In a constructive way. I believe that as well. And I think that you make such a good point. We're going to have conversations that aren't for everyone. We're going to put out the type of, advice or ideas or content that's not for everyone, and that's fine. Some people will resonate with this message around empathy and around, doing things that truly connect us to other human beings so we can grow together, so we can learn together, so we can collaborate and just scale our abilities and our know-how and generally, try to live more, just better relationships, I guess. And then there are going to be people who don't resonate with this, and that's fine as well. But I think that it is still worth it. And I appreciate how open you are about this, and the fact that you're, like you mentioned, you're intentionally making yourself vulnerable online, which not many people have the ability of doing or have the, let's say, availability of doing, and not just in technology, but generally many, many areas. So I appreciate you for that. And I know that I'm not alone. I've seen, your community grow, and I've seen you, do a lot of things that have had a positive impact on people. And I'm really excited to see what you do next and how you continue to make that happen.
Thanks a lot. I'll try to do my best. And some empathy goes a long way, I think. If we're all a little bit nicer, and even if we don't, or maybe that's a good advice. If we don't feel good ourselves, don't start shouting on Twitter or anywhere else. But
that is sound advice and a very good way to kind of, round up this.
Or post a bad joke and you will be smiling yourself or not, or people will tell you it's a bad joke. Otherwise, other ones will think it's an amazing joke, and you'll have some happiness throughout the day.
Exactly. Thank you so much, John. This has been such a wonderful conversation once again. It is packed with lessons and examples, real examples of how things are improving and how progress is actually real and how you can make that happen. So I appreciate this, and I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you.
It was lovely to discover new ways of practicing empathy and cybersecurity with you today. Explore the podcast for more stories about connection, for more inspiring ideas, and for more people who drive online security and privacy forward. It's a great chance to learn from them how to improve your own practice of empathy, both in keeping yourself safe online, but also far beyond that. You can find all of the episodes on andrazaharia.com, plus a bunch of resources that come with each episode, and lots more articles and guides that could help you along the way. Lovely seeing you here, and be sure to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn if you have any ideas or want to propose any new guests. See you around.